Hello everyone. Now that all of the studio photographs are done and the sort of high production video is shot, I wanted to do the more casual video for the new piece because I actually think these videos are more informative. They explain a lot more and just kind of show off the piece and talk about a couple of things. If you remember what I've been working on this year, I've been working on these sort of bead-like designs. So this is the complete series. And one of the sort of starting ideas with that was that I was just trying to sort of create works that have a little more of a developed interior design space or an interior space that's interesting. It's something that's kind of it's kind of a hard idea to approach with machine work because interior spaces are normally closed off, or there's hardware and stuff in there that you're just trying to hide. So making that a focal point was just sort of the loose idea around these pieces. So this new piece, the second piece in the series was a mechanical slider. The first one was just a sculptural bead, and this one is like the first one, just a looker piece, not mechanical, and that's just because there's some design constraints that would have prevented any kind of mechanical action. It wasn't the focus of the idea. That said, one of the things that I think is appealing to me about this piece, and is appealing about a lot of these little pieces, is that there's when you're working on an idea or a problem, and it took me a better part of a year to kind of sort out this design, just to get this little threaded pattern in here. I knew that I wanted to work with something like that, but it went through a lot of iterations, and so one of the things that I think that a lot of artists sort of talk about and sort of come to realize is that when you finally arrive at a solution, it seems incredibly obvious. The solution seems almost easy, and that's not to detract from the accomplishment, but I think that that's one way that artists know that an idea is done. And I think this is probably true of designers too, and craftspeople. You know, the idea is done when the idea seems obvious, or when the solution seems simple. And so, you know, one of the things I worked with is just how to get this sort of threaded pattern in here. I knew that, you know, the way to do that is to just drill a series of holes on an appropriate angle around the circumference of an object and then bore that out. But actually sorting that out in a way that worked, that made sense, and that actually was aesthetically appealing was the hard part. Originally, like, you know, the ends of these were protrusions that were just going to be their own cap thing, but from an aesthetic standpoint, that seemed really obvious and simple, and it didn't really work. And then, you know, combining that with how to fasten each of these little finger pieces on was all part of it. So getting those to all sort of nest together was the challenge of this design, and it just took a while to sort out. It's not a particularly complicated piece, but I think the end result is just really elegant and nice, and so I'm very pleased with it. Obviously, this is considerably bigger than its forebears here, but that was sort of intentional. I just wanted the room to stick with this dimensional motif of the fingers. So these are roughly the same size. I just kind of wanted to expand on that without being constrained by a certain size requirement. So this is obviously just a sculpture, a little bit larger. But how it assembles is pretty simple. I'll just pop one of these off with my trusty little custom screwdriver and just show you how they thread in. So actually put little sort of decorative edges on this so they could be turned as a thumb screw too. So in the original ones, all of the hardware engaged in the center of the object, right? In the center of the piece. Same with this one, and is centered. In this one, the fastening hardware is way off center. It's at the tip. This extra hole is for fabrication purposes, and it's hidden in the final design. But And then you'll just see that, you know, neatly situated off center on an angle is where I was able to fit this hole and hide this entry point for this rod that just slides out. Now getting that to fit and getting that clearance, the clearance angle is pretty snug. If I line this up, it looks like there's more clearance than there is, but just getting that to fit on the right angle, and then getting all of these to clear each other on the right angle and fitting 7 of them in there was quite a challenge. And that's it. There's just 3 parts, and then the body. So it's a screw, the rod, and the finger. But there are 7 of them, and they all, you know, nest into one another. I will say that, what was I gonna say? Oh, one of the things I did, you can hear that it rattles a little bit. I hope to kind of mitigate that a little bit in the future, but the reason for that is because I left a lot of play here. I left some room here so that this doesn't bind when it clamps on, and then I left these pretty loose in holes because these all roll, and it's actually, it's not meant to be a tactile piece per se, but the fact that these roll is actually kind of nice. It feels nice to get your fingers in there and play with that. And somebody at some point made a comment about how this is some reference to some kind of bearing, and I don't think that was intentional, but that makes sense to me. So there is this little element of there's a little tactile feel in here that I wanted to preserve. Figuring out how to machine this work was actually a lot of fun too. One thing I did was, in order to drill these holes, I needed to leave enough material in here so that there wasn't an interrupted cut, because otherwise that drill bit would try and walk itself out. So what I did was, instead, to set this up, I bored a tapered hole in here that left enough material so it wouldn't disturb this area. I mounted that on the milling machine on the taper, and from there I was able to mill all these features at once. I was able to mill the slot, drill that hole, and then use a back boring operation to create that shoulder in there. And then after that operation was done, I was able to just mount it back in the lathe and then open this bore up to reveal this geometry. So sort of sorting out the 4-dimensional logistics of that was a lot of fun. Which brings me to the other aspect of this project that I kind of wanted to talk about. So each of these former designs tackled one exotic material in particular, and I wanted to design, and the idea was that I was going to be designing to that exotic material. So the first in the series was this one. Obviously I only have the stainless versions in front of me here, but this one was, I used superconductor as the sort of material du jour to design to, and in this one the bodies, there was a version where the bodies were made of makumigane. And this one, actually this is one of the most popular exotic materials out there, and so I sort of saved it for last. So this is titanium Damascus, these blue and purple swirly bits, and it's an incredibly popular material to work with, least of which because titanium is very durable, it's lightweight, it's super strong, and then you can hit it with a flame and heat it up, and it turns this beautiful iridescent blue, gold, and purple, which is actually a type of anodizing. And I actually tried, I didn't know this, which is actually was sort of fascinating to me. I'm not quite sure the science on this, but you can anodize titanium electrochemically. You can just stick it in an anodizing tank with the right current, and it will anodize blue and yellow, or actually there's quite a wide range of colors. And so when you heat treat this, the titanium Damascus is made of several different alloys of titanium so that they react with the flame differently. So they self-heat anodize at a different rate, and that's how you get the differentiation in colors. But actually, when you stick this in an electric anodizing tank, they all just anodize the same color. So they all just go the same blue. And so you can't see the pattern when you anodize it in a tank, which I found that fascinating. I've not seen anywhere someone explain that, why the anodizing reacts differently under heat, but not under electricity. And I'm sure if I dug around a little bit, I could find it. But anyway, that was a sort of fun thing for me to discover while I was working with it. I will say that one thing about titanium Damascus is you are stuck with this one color scheme. You are stuck with this blue, purple, gold. Depending on how much you heat it up, you can get less blue, more purple, or more gold and less everything else. But by and large, you're stuck with this motif. So it is a very distinct look. So I'm kind of curious to see, I made the choice to pair it with this purple. Initially, I had it on this gray piece, and it stood out. It stood out nicely against the gray, but I think it plays nicer on this purple. But I'm sort of curious to see how it's going to look against other colors. I obviously haven't prototyped a bunch of other color schemes, but I think there are limits. I don't know if it's going to play nice with every color combination. So I'm sort of curious to see how that plays out going forward. The other thing that I didn't do is I didn't make the inner bits out of titanium Damascus, and the reason for that is simple. I want these to roll, and I think they'll pick up small scratches in the process. Probably not much, but these roll, and I think since the heat anodizing is only on the surface, over time, if you were to keep rolling that, you would just kind of scratch off that coloring, and I think it would start to look a little nasty. And so I just decided that these decorative elements should be titanium Damascus, and I should leave these as stainless. Plus, I think this is a brighter coloring and shows off that interior space better than something that would be dark and hard to see. We'll quickly talk about so I 3D printed these stands. These are very rough. They still need a little bit of work too. I gotta adjust it. It's still a little bit shaky. I gotta fine tune that, but I'm gonna include these little 3D printed stands, but I'm not gonna go nuts with it because I've probably said this before, but I don't really consider the stands to be part of the work. So they're just sort of accessory. And so I think I don't really, I like that they look, that they're not a part of the work. I want them to just be this little sort of functional thing. So I'm gonna adjust that. I'm gonna print them at a higher resolution, but I'm not gonna put too much other thought into that for philosophical reasons, to say the least. So anyway, that's the set. I look forward to hearing your comments and feedback. Thanks.